And hello and welcome to another episode of the NHL Schooler. And we have absolutely a ton of stuff to talk about today as we head right into the NHL playoffs in the coming week. As all 16 of the NHL in the Stanley Cup playoffs are nearly filled. 15 of the 16 are locked in. The only one is Montreal or Calgary in the Scotia North fourth and final spot. And that one is basically a formality at this point, as there's probably about a 99% chance it's Montreal. The only way it could be Calgary is if Calgary wins their final 4 games in regulation or overtime, and Montreal loses their last in regulation without picking up a single point. If that were to happen, the two teams would tie 57 points, and the Calgary Flames would get the tiebreaker on the regulation overtime win. But that would be an epic meltdown. So essentially, looks like what we're looking at is Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Montreal in the Scotia North, Mass Mutual East, Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, New York. That's locked in. Central, Carolina, Florida, Tampa Bay, Nashville, and the West Division, Vegas, Colorado, Vegas, Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis. That's also locked in. Some seeding in the air, as some teams across the league have finished their 56-game schedule, but most teams have 1 to 2 games to go. Vegas clinched the division yet in the Honda West, as they are 4 points ahead of Colorado. Colorado with 3 games to go. Vegas with 2 games to go. And that can be the top spot in the West Division. That is a bit of a coveted spot, as that would mean that they would get to play St. Louis, almost 20 points behind Louis, significantly worse than the Wild this season. And the Avalanche still do play the Golden Knights. That game tonight at 8 o'clock Mountain Time, local time there in Colorado and Vegas. That'll be a huge showdown. And win this game tonight, they have officially clinched the West Division title, which would be massive, as Colorado, obviously one of the top tiers, one of the best teams across the league. And Lewis won the Stanley Cup in the last full season. Minnesota has looked spectacular this year. So winning this division is no small feat, and I think whoever wins this division will probably be either the top or second and worst Stanley Cup favorite. So Vegas, Colorado tonight, do the line. I think Vegas is going to get it. It does seem mathematically very likely that they do. For the Avalanche after the Knights game tonight, if they're able to beat the Knights tonight, that would put them at 2 points behind Vegas with 2 games to go, and Vegas with 1 game to go. The games for Colorado will be against the Los Angeles Kings, whereas Vegas, after this Colorado game, plays just San Jose out their season. So Vegas, if they can win either of those games, then it looks like they will clinch the Honda West Division, as they are the row regulation overtime wins. They're up 2 games in, or two row in that column. So Vegas, pretty likely looks like they'll get the top spot, but it all comes down to tonight. Vegas and Colorado playing for the West Division title. Minnesota still, even a point behind Colorado, focused on winning the division, but they might not even get home ice in the first round, as the Minnesota Wild, just 1 point behind them. And the Wild kind of in the same boat that the Abs are in relation to the Golden Knights, as the Wild just 1 point at Colorado, and their remaining games this season, they only have games left, both at St. Louis on the 12th and 13th. The Wild will play at St. Louis. And St. Louis, obviously, as I said, way far behind Minnesota, and I don't think Minnesota has any danger in falling a spot. But if they can get 2 wins against St. Louis there, that would jump them up to 79 points, which would force Colorado to pick up 3 points in the final 3 games. So lots going on in the West, and it does not change much when you get to the Mass Mutual East Division. The Pittsburgh Penguins have clinched the division title, as Washington has 1 game to go, down 2 points, but they would not get the tiebreaker, as Pittsburgh has 1 more regulation overtime win. So Pittsburgh has clinched the Mass Mutual East, and the Islanders and Boston still kind of jousting for seeding there for the 3rd and 4th spots. Washington has locked up. It looks like Washington has locked up the second division. So Washington will play the better of the Boston and New York. Boston and New York separated by 1 point. New York with 55 games played, Boston with 54. So 1 and 2 games to go left for them, respectively. As is in most, we usually don't see every playoff spot locked up this early. Like, with 3 or 4 games to go, pretty much every playoff spot, 15 out of 16 were locked up, and this Montreal one is really just a formality. But seeding is all over the place in this Boston and little matchup they have going on for that third spot. There is we are fortunate enough, like in the Vegas-Colorado situation, to have a head-to-head matchup as the New York Islanders face the Boston Bruins tonight. So we have 2 games that seeding between teams that are both the 2 teams fighting for it. Then we have Boston and the Islanders. If Boston wins this one, then they will clinch the 3 seed, as this is New York's final game on the season. So Boston wins this, they clinch the 3 seed. If New York wins this, then they will need Boston to lose the season against Washington, which would give the Caps matchup with the Bruins and the Islanders the matchup with the Pittsburgh Penguins. In the Scotia North Division, as we mentioned, assuming Montreal gets that final spot, that does seem all but a guarantee at this point. Montreal, they could still even jump to the 3 seed, but as of right now, it will be Toronto, Montreal, and then Edmonton, Winnipeg, which is those are great matchups. The only downside, if you want to call it that, there's really not a downside, but if you want to say is, I think a lot of people were looking forward to the possibility of Matthews in the first round. Toronto playing with Edmonton in the first round would have been electric for sure. And I think that just as from a fan perspective, I'm not a fan of any of these teams, but from a hockey fan perspective, you do hope that we can play in the second round, just because that would be fun to see 2 of the best players in the world, and one of them is indisputably the best player in the world at this point, Connor McDavid, playing each other in the playoffs. But Edmonton, Winnipeg would be an absolutely great matchup, as would Toronto, Montreal. Toronto and Montreal haven't played each other in the playoffs in decades, longtime old rivals, heading back to the original 6 era. So Toronto, Montreal, looking forward to that series as well. Montreal, as I said, they could potentially catch Winnipeg. They are 2 points behind them. Montreal has 2 games to go. Winnipeg has the Jets on the schedule for them. The rest of the season is they play at Vancouver. They play host Vancouver twice, today and tomorrow, and then go to Toronto on Friday, which Vancouver Canucks have only played 49 games played this season. They are last in the division, so it's not essential, but the Flames have also only played 52 games. So Vancouver and Calgary would have 3 games to go at the end of the season after everyone else has clinched their spots. After both of them are likely going to be eliminated, but if Winnipeg can pick up a point Winnipeg can pick up 2 points in these 2 games against Vancouver, which seems fairly likely that they win one of them or they lose both in overtime, then Winnipeg will clinch that 3rd spot, clinch the playoff spot. So Winnipeg and Edmonton, it looks like, in the first round. That would be a very interesting first round matchup. The Jets and the Oilers. It's a unique matchup. Jets and Oilers have obviously faced off quite a few in the North Division. Jets need to find a way to stop McDavid, as they have been able to do this year. Jets and Oilers. The Oilers this year against the Jets, 7-2. So Oilers have had their number this year. I would take the Oilers in this series, but I think the Jets are a scrappy team. The Jets are a team that kind of they know how to shut down some big playmakers like McDavid at times, especially one they had a little some drama earlier in the year, but then getting ready, trading him to Columbus kind of seemed like a win-win for both teams at the time. Pierre-Luc Dubois is fitting nicely in Winnipeg. Then on the forwards, they have a fairly deep forward class. Kyle Connor, of course, Nikolai Ehlers, just going down, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler. They have a forward core. Hopefully that they can use their depth to outlast the Oilers. That would be the key to the series for them. Then, of course, getting their defense as in top shape as you can when you're playing a guy, David. But with their top 4 there, they have a good chance to do so. And, of course, in the reigning Vezina Trophy winner in Connor Hellebuyck. But Jets and Oilers, looks like that'll be the playoff series. Toronto, Montreal, I'm not Canadian, I don't live in Canada, but even I could feel the buzz feeling in a Toronto-Montreal playoff series. Eastern Canada will be going crazy. All of Quebec, Ontario for that sensational matchup. Moving up to one last division we have not touched on yet would be the Central Division. The is the only division that has locked up the East Division, which was just yesterday. The only divisions that have locked up the division champion, as Toronto clinched in the North Division last week, but Carolina just a few days ago, 80 points for them, just outlast Florida, who had 77, and then Tampa Bay with 75. But who would have thought that the Tampa Bay Lightning, the reigning Stanley Cup champion, dominant team the last 2 seasons, not even getting home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs, as the Hurricanes with 80 points through 55 games, the Florida Panthers with 77 games, and the Tampa Bay Lightning at 75 points through 55 games. So 2 games to go, Panthers, Lightning, each team with 1 game to go, and they are also tied in the row in regulation overtime win. If Florida picks up 1 point in their final game of the season, they will clinch home ice. But this is another one similar to the Toronto-Montreal. This is an intra-Florida matchup. Panthers, Lightning in the first round of the playoffs. And I think that will be great in Florida. The Panthers just haven't been nearly as good as the Lightning. It's been a little bit of a lopsided. It's been a bit of a lopsided rivalry the last few years. This would be their very first playoff series. I mean, Panthers, Lightning have never played in the playoffs, so this would be fantastic. And it comes down to Panthers and Lightning tonight. Another spectacular game. I mean, the NHL couldn't have planned this any better, even if they had known who was going to be in the playoffs at the end of the year. These matchups tonight, as you have Panthers, Lightning, Oilers, Canadiens, Islanders, Bruins, Canucks, Jets, Hurricanes, Predators, Blues, Kings, Avalanche, Golden Knights, and then a couple games up in teams that are out of contention. But this is exactly, we have Panthers, Lightning. It's essentially an extra playoff game. I mean, it's going to basically be an 8-game series starting tonight. Winner of this one gets home ice. And if Tampa Bay wins in regulation, they get home ice. If anything else happens, Florida gets home ice. And then they'll have their 7-game playoff series, an epic battle for the Governor's Cup, the state of Florida, coming up in the first round of the playoffs. Carolina, Nashville, I think the series is Nashville, of course, over the last 5-6 years has been the better team, but Carolina looks so good this year. And Carolina really just leading the way all the way around. If we look at Carolina's statistical leaders, Sebastian Aho, 57 points. He's clearly the best player of the team, but then Trocheck, Hamilton, Svechnikov, Neshis, Jordan Stahl, all these guys are around 40 points or more. And then Peter Mrazek, of course, at a 1.77 GAA. They've been firing on all cylinders. Winning this division is absolutely not an easy task. That is the first time Stanley Cup champion and Stanley Cup runner-up have been in the same division in 60 years. And it's been a very impressive showing by Carolina to both those teams, as of course Dallas didn't even here. Dallas sitting out there at 58 points, but Nashville already clinching that. Dallas, had the best they can do is come within 1 point of Nashville, but unfortunately falling short for them. So I think this is the Central Division is going to be the sneakiest matchups in the playoffs. Nashville, Florida, Tampa Bay is definitely the most under the radar, as Tampa Bay is pretty solid fan support. Florida, very under the radar team just because they don't get much coverage, they don't get much fan support, but they are such a good team, and I think they are a team that can make a playoff run. They are picked to come out of the Central Division. I think they can beat Tampa Bay, and then probably Carolina, but it could be Nashville. Carolina's on upset watch, I think, versus Nashville. So Florida and Nashville, I think, are the 2 upset watch teams, because Tampa will still probably be favored even if they don't get home ice in this series against Florida. Looking into some other playoff matchups, assuming Vegas wins this division, Vegas, St. Louis, I think Vegas handles this one really easily. And nothing's ever easy in the NHL playoffs, but I kind of see Vegas, St. Louis as being like a 5-game series, maybe even a sweep. I think Vegas is just better than them in pretty much every fashion. It was kind of fumbled their way into the playoffs, as top heavy as this division is. Vegas, Colorado, Minnesota, such dominant forces that Arizona, San Jose, LA, Anaheim was not much of a force to fight with for St. Louis playoff spot. And Arizona, even still, Arizona finished their schedule already, but they're only 3 points behind St. Louis. So it's not like St. St. Louis ran away with it, but those are not good teams. Arizona and the 3 California teams, they're not good teams, and they're teams that St. Louis should have been able to run away earlier. St. Louis is kind of just like somebody has to be that 4th playoff spot, and it turns out to be the Blues. So excited for them, but would not expect them to make any sort of run. In the East Division, this one is tough to predict because we don't really know the matchups that are really 50-50. It could be Islanders, Pittsburgh, and Washington Bruins, or it could be Capitals, Boston, and New York and Penguins. Assuming it is the current situation, which is probably slightly more likely. The Islanders Penguins will be a very good. Because who wins that game, that series should absolutely go 6 or 7 games. I would expect, but I think probably Pittsburgh comes out on top. Just the Islanders with some injuries, they're missing Anders Lee, but they can push Pittsburgh to the brink. I would say Pittsburgh probably has a chance to sort of win that series. So it is a bit of a toss up. I would be surprised if the Islanders would come away with that. I think that one will be closer than Capitals Bruins. Capitals have been playing very well. They've outlasted the Bruins. And Islanders will be the better team in this series. They have better goaltending as well as of late, with Samsonov, Vanacek, seeing who they can get net for that game. But Capitals and Bruins this year, 2021, it's been a bit of a toss up, kind of in a 3-4 record for Washington. They played each other in the last game of the season, so this is another series that could come down to kind of a bit of an 8-game series, as the last game of the season they played each other, followed by a 7-game play. We will see about that, but I would expect Washington, and I would say Pittsburgh probably in the end. Pittsburgh and Washington in the second round, and as Pittsburgh and Washington, whenever they play in the playoffs, that's always a treat for all hockey fans. So hopefully looking forward to that in the second round of the playoffs. In the Scotia North Division, I think Montreal and Toronto is going to be a lot closer than people think, and I'm sorry to say it, Leaf fans. I think that Montreal is going to put up a fight. This is going to be a deep series, and Montreal always finds a way to kind of outlast Toronto and kind of has Toronto on their heels. It wouldn't surprise me if in the series like 1-0, 2-1, something like that. Toronto will probably come back. Toronto is clearly the better team on paper, but Montreal, they always do find a way, and I think this would be an epic, historic 7-game series. I'm going to take Montreal in 7 games in this one, between and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm going to take Montreal in 7. Unfortunately, I think it'll end soon. I do think it'll end soon, but I think this is not the year that the Maple Leafs playoff drought ends. Of course, have not won a playoff series since 2004. I don't think it ends this year, unfortunate to say, Leaf fans. The other series in that division, Edmonton, Winnipeg. I think Edmonton can take this one overall. I think this will be a 5 or 6 game series. Winnipeg is not a bad team. This is not a blowout or anything. They'll probably be close games, but Edmonton will outlast them in the end. Also, just to cover stats, kind of the statistical leaders across the league. We can't go through a show without mentioning Connor McDavid. I mean, the guy has 100 points, 100 points in under, and this isn't even a full season. This season, of course, the Oilers have only played 53 games. Connor McDavid, he's on a different level. He's the greatest player since Gretzky, in my opinion. This season, 53 games, 32 goals, 1,600 points, plus 26, only 20 penalty minutes, 35 power play points. Like, he's just absolutely unreal. I mean, 100 points. The next most points of anyone in the league is 79 to Leon Draisaitl. After that, it's 67 to Brad Marchand. So it's his one less points, and that's second, followed by Brad Marchand. I mean, seeing a difference like this of 33 points between him and the third place guy and the fourth place guy. And then it's just a kind of a log jam from down to Huberdeau in 10th place from 67 to 61. McDavid is just on an absolute different level. He's far better than anyone, and it would be better for the sport if he were to go on a bit of a deep run in the playoffs with the Oilers. Also, just of the Norris Trophy, which has become an interesting race. Adam Fox has kind of been leading the way a little bit. Obviously, Makar, Chris Letang, Victor Hedman, Carlson, these guys are always in the race. Adam Fox has been the most impressive this year, but I think that is kind of swayed a little bit for a few reasons. One, just playing in New York, where they've gotten a lot of coverage this year. The Rangers, they've actually stayed in it longer than most people thought. And then D'Angelo on their defensive core getting cut earlier in the year brought some coverage to them. But also Adam Fox, no one expected him to be this good. You know about Cam Makar, John Carlson, Victor Hedman, Chris Letang, guys like that. But I don't think anyone expected this out of Adam Fox, which is what we get. I think he's a strong candidate for the Norris. The Calder Trophy Rookie of the Year, I think, is a blown away Kirill Kaprizov. He is the reason that the Minnesota Wild are in the playoffs right now, that they are going to play either Colorado or Vegas in that first, and they may even have home ice. Who knows? So he is the reason for that. He deserves Rookie of the Year, despite the fact that he did play a few hundred games in the KHL. He's an NHL rookie. He's not by no means a professional rookie. So maybe not as impressive as some of these other guys who are, 18, 19, 20 years old who haven't professionally. But the wording of the rule is, or the wording of the award is, just best first NHL season. That is determined as a rookie. That one goes to Kaprizov. Other news from around the league. Andre Fleury, of course, long-time goalie across multiple time Stanley Cup champion. But Marc-Andre Fleury getting the third start of the week after Kaprizov, and of course McDavid, Kaprizov and McDavid, obvious that due to their huge weeks. Kaprizov with another clinching the playoffs for the Wild. McDavid getting 100 points, and then Marc-Andre Fleury has been carrying the Golden Knights along the way. But just to close, going over the playoffs one more time, we have so many good matchups at hand, some that we may never see again. The Central Division, Carolina and Nashville, that's an interconference matchup after this year. We won't see it again unless it is a Stanley Cup final matchup. This will be our best opportunity to get Toronto, Edmonton, Matthews, Marner, McDavid for a very long time. But Vegas, Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis in the West, Washington, Pittsburgh, New York, Boston in the East, Carolina, Florida, Tampa Bay, Nashville in the Central, and Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and probably Montreal in the North. It would take an epic comeback for the Flames to regain that top spot, or regain that last spot over Montreal. Don't anticipate it happening. But the Stanley Cup playoffs expected to end the Stanley Cup playoffs expected to start 5-6 days. The season will be ending this Friday, this Saturday, something like that. Hopefully the playoffs can start maybe the 17th to 19th of May, and we'll see how relevant the Vancouver-Calgary games are at the end of the year. But until then, we will have lots of good hockey at the end of the year. I mentioned so many good matchups tonight that are just basically essentially previews of a playoff series, playing each other. We'll play in the playoffs, each other, jousting for seeding tonight, determine seeding in some cases, and kind of possibly, depending on the team that wins in other cases, Vegas, Colorado, Edmonton, Montreal, Islanders or Bruins, Lightning, Panthers. Those are the two biggest ones of the night. Islanders, Bruins, Lightning, Panthers. Biggest games on tap, and of course Avalanche, Golden Knights. Those three games are must watch, cannot miss games. So we'll see those, and then we'll catch you next week. We'll go over the beginning of the playoffs that will be coming next Monday on our show here on Spanglish TV. Until then, I'll see you next time. My name is Jeremy Schooler.